Okay, welcome back. So this is the end of our lecture on drawing, and I just wanted to recap where we were left off, where we were talking about the difference between line drawing and tonal drawing, and how fully tonal drawings, like these two on the right, kind of raise questions about the definition of what is or isn't a drawing, making the definition of drawing being purely about line less clear, less certain. One thing I wanted to cover in that first part, which I failed to do, is just also I wanted to reiterate the importance of gesture in the education of drawing students. As a drawing teacher myself, I find it really critical for students to learn to be gestural, to make gesture drawings. It helps them to learn to see the whole and to see without having like their literal blocks prevent them from seeing clearly. So for the rest of the lecture, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the different types of drawings there are, different kinds of materials that people use in drawings, and then occasionally we'll talk a little bit more about how each of these materials maybe raises or changes our ideas about what the definition of drawing is. So first I wanted to talk about pastel drawing, and you can't really talk about pastel drawing without first showing Degas. And this, the bottom one, the tub by Degas, that's a drawing and an image that we will see a number of times, and it will definitely be one of the works of art that can possibly be on one or more tests throughout the semester. And pastel drawing certainly raises the question of, like, can drawing have color? But many pastel artists will refer to pastel as a form of painting because they feel it's very much about thinking about color and shape and not about line and tone and form. When we're talking about pastel drawing, I think it's good to kind of think about some of the beginnings of pastel drawing. And pastel drawings began in France and in the 18th century, and drawings like these kind of give us some sense of that. I've seen the drawing on the right, the Leotard drawing, and it's a beautiful drawing, and it does kind of show how painterly pastel drawing can be. I also love to talk about Redon anytime I'm talking about pastel drawing. He's one of my favorite artists of all time, and definitely one of the artists I think who has done the most original work with pastels. And he both uses it very much like a drawing tool, sometimes like drawing very concrete, definite lines, but he also uses it in a very painterly way, allowing it to just be these kind of shapes of color, sometimes more misty kind of shapes of colors, and other times more concrete. And oftentimes when I'm talking about a medium, like let's say when we're talking about drawing or when we're going to talk about ceramics, I like to also talk about some contemporary artists, and I like to talk about, when we talk about contemporary artists, wherever I can talk about people that I actually know, people that I've actually met. And Sheldon Tapley is an artist that I know. He hired me to be his sabbatical replacement for one semester or 1 year at Center College, and I had a studio right next door to his while he was working on amazing drawings, very much like these, mostly still life drawings, but also he does fantastic pastels of landscapes. And so I really admire his work, and I hope you take a look at these pieces, but also you might want to look up Sheldon Tapley and see other pieces that he's made. And we'll actually talk about his work, and specifically about this piece, the Harvest Table. Again, when we talk about composition, we talk about hierarchy and emphasis, because it really kind of pushes the boundaries of how many focal points, how many emphasis can you have in a single piece, and how do you keep that all together and keep it all hierarchical. Another art medium that is both very contemporary but also has a long tradition is silver point. We see a lot of great silver point drawings coming from the early and the late Renaissance, especially the Italian Renaissance. It's a very beautiful material. You're drawing with a piece of metal. Usually it's silver, but you could also do this with a piece of copper or other types of metal. And you have a sharpened point, and as you're drawing with it, it's basically just parts of that metal just scraping onto the paper. One of the beautiful things about silver point, as well as some other types of metal point, is that as the metal ages, as the drawing ages, the metal oxidizes, and then therefore gets darker, and the drawing gets richer and has more contrast. I have this drawing on blue paper here, the bunny as an example of contemporary artists who are also using silver point. She's using silver point as well as white chalk for the highlights. Also, brush and ink is a good example of a drawing tool and kind of a school of drawing that kind of pushes the boundaries. We often will talk about watercolor being a form of painting, even though it's on paper, but brush and ink, whether the person is using a pen, like in the Tapley where he's using both a brush and a pen, but even if he wasn't using a pen, we often refer to works of paper like that as a drawing because it's tonal and because it's preparatory. Whether it's a drawing or a painting is in some ways beside the point. Like that Tiepolo is gorgeous. All three of these pieces are some of my favorites. We'll probably see that Tiepolo again, and I know we'll definitely see the Sessutoyo piece again. We'll talk about that when we're talking about economy, as well as some other design issues. And let me say this, whenever you see a piece that repeats over and over again through the course, it's a good probability that you're probably going to see that drawing or that painting as a piece to be identified on one of the tests. So lastly, I just want to talk about some more examples of contemporary drawing. I have a William Kentridge up in the top left corner where he's working with kind of collage pieces, working directly on found paper. But I especially want to talk about Sol LeWitt here at the bottom right. The Sol LeWitt drawing, we've already seen one example of a Sol LeWitt drawing, but here we actually get to see what a Sol LeWitt installation looks like, where the instructions on paper are then put into practice. And I think his idea of what is a drawing really does kind of push the boundaries, where it's not a thing contained by a piece of paper or by a specific space. It could be done almost anywhere, and it's still the same drawing. All right, well, that is the end of this lecture. Thank you very much.